Hi, this is Dr. Kurt Jiris, and I'm here with my friend Dr. Mike Licona, and we are talking about his new book, Jesus Contradicted: Why the Gospels Tell the Same Story Differently. Mike, the issue of genre comes up in your book. Tell us, what is genre, and what do you think the genre of the Gospels are?
Well, genre, like the genre of music. Is it rock? Is it classical? Is it jazz? What is that genre? It's a type. So when we talk about literary genres, is it poetry? Is it history, biography? Is it fiction? What is it? Well, for most of church history, the church has thought of the Gospels as ancient biographies. But then about 200 years ago, that started to change, and they're saying, well, it's what the Latin term sui generis, and which means like a unique genre. And they were saying, well, the Gospels are a unique genre. They formed their own genre. Well, then in the 1970s, you had a couple of scholars, Charles Talbert, David Awney, and so forth. And then later on, they were saying that the Gospels are ancient biographies. And then you had Richard Burridge come along and he said, no, they're not ancient biographies. And he set out to disprove it. And in the process of it, he concluded that they are ancient biographies. This was close to 30 years, well, about 30 years ago. And his book, What Are the Gospels?, became a game changer in the world of New Testament studies. Craig Keener has written on this as well, saying that they're ancient biographies. Most scholars today do think that the Gospels are either ancient biographies or though they share a lot in common with that genre. Now, here's the reason this is important. It would be a mistake for us today to say, just because the term biography is similar, that it's an identical genre with modern biography. It's not. It's almost. But ancient biography had some different objectives. They wanted to illustrate, as Plutarch and others tell us, they wanted to illuminate the character of the main person being featured in it through the stories told about their words and their deeds. And so sometimes they would take some flexibility in the way that they reported the details and so forth. Stuff that, well, they do it today even in modern biography, but not to the same extent that they did with ancient biography. So when we recognize that the Gospels are ancient biographies and how they wrote, a whole lot more comes into focus on Jesus himself, like Christology. Very high Christology in Mark. It's hard to get any higher than what Mark has. And yet over the years, they'd say Mark is the lowest Christology.
Yeah.
But it's not the case. It's every bit as high as Johannine Christology when you read the Gospel of Mark in view of its biographical genre, according to ancient biography. But it also gives us some nice insights when it comes to gospel differences and why those differences actually exist.
You know, a modern tool that modern biographers would have would be, say, an audio recorder. You could record an interview with your biographical subject. They didn't quite have that tool, the audio recorder.
No.
No smartphones, of course, for voice memos, or anything like that.
Shorthand was in its infancy. Narratives and the best shorthand folks were in Rome. So, it would have been very difficult to get verbatim kind of stuff.
Yeah, so that's why there's some, modest variation. But yeah, the authors took other liberties as well to describe their subject. Now, let me ask you this. It seems that either way you go on the spectrum between things in common or variance, if you go one way, you've got the concern, if you go the direction of commonality, you've got the concern of collusion. If you go the other way, that they're so different that they're not trustworthy, where do the Gospels lie in that spectrum between variance and commonality, and why is that a strength for them?
Well, it's a strength. It's hard to say where they lay in it, but it's a strength because when we compare how, let's say, Matthew and Luke use Mark, they do adapt him. They do edit him. It is easy and plain to see this. It's indisputable. Okay. But Plutarch does it as well. We can do this by looking at comparing Plutarch with Plutarch and how Plutarch reports the same events multiple times in different biographies he wrote. We can look at it how Josephus looks at the scriptures and how he and Philo, who are saying they're not going to change anything, how they change things. We can see that Matthew and Luke stick closer to their primary source, Mark, than Josephus sticks to the scriptures. And they take far less editorial freedom than Plutarch does with his sources. And as we see, he varies the story and the way it's told in multiple biographies.
Great. Well, if you want to learn more about this book, click on the link in the description below. Jesus Contradicted, published by Zondervan Academic, and the subtitle is Why the Gospels Tell the Same Story Differently.